Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Rohi lo echsan, Dinot She'el B'tzeini, Menuchot Yanachaleni, Nafshi Shovei, Yamacheni v'magle tzedek l'ma'an shamo, Gam ki herech v'gitzam avet, Lo hira'ara ki ata imadi, Shivtecha u'mishantecha, Hema yenachavoni, Ta'aruch lefanai shulchan neged tzorirai, Dishanta v'shemen roshi, Kosiri v'yad, Achto v'chesed yirdifuni, Kol yamei chayai, V'shaviti b'veit Adonai, Le'orech yamim. I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. In seeking comfort and strength, we often turn to the psalmist. And so, for those of you who know this text, I invite you to recite these words with me now as we say together, The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us, as we remember Gladys, Elaine, Cavell. To her children, to Joan and Judith, also to George and Roger, and to her grandchildren, Julia, Jessie, Megan, Danny, and also to David and Max, to the members of the family, and to her dear and cherished friends. We gather here today to remember, but also to celebrate the life of your beloved Gladys. Our sages in their wisdom have taught us that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and from youth to age, from innocence to awareness and then, perhaps, to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness, and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, and from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. In examining the journey that each of us take, today in examining Gladys's journey, I'm reminding of the words from Pirkei Avot, the ethics, the words of our ancestors, which speak about an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, but translated literally, a woman who is like a soldier, a woman who is strong, described to me as a woman who was very special, and a woman who, in some of her most challenging moments, was brave, exemplified bravery, and wanted to better her community and her world, and was brave in doing so. We know that words which come from the heart often enter to the heart, and today many members of the family have words in their heart that they want to share with all of us. And so I now invite her generations, her family, her loved ones, to rise up and speak praises and words from their hearts.
Thank you, Cantor, Rabbi, and thank you everyone who's here today to honor my mother and respect us. So thank you. I wrote some things, I'm going to read them. How to eulogize a mother who fed me cookies, cake, ice cream, donuts, milk with honey in it for breakfast, just so I could start the day sweet. A mother who thought I was so interesting that all through my school year she would keep me home one day a month just to hang with her while she ironed, shopped, or watched soap operas. A mother who was so outgoing and outspoken that she didn't blend in. My mother, Gladys, was creative, enthusiastic, and the first to figure out what needed to be done and then get it done. She was a great and patient teacher. When they told her I was slow because I couldn't learn to read, she figured out how to teach me to read and made me an avid reader for life. She made up songs so that our kids could spell their names before they even knew they had last names. God forbid they should get lost. There are many things I want to say about my mother, Gladys, or Mommy as I will always call her. While no one is perfect, and certainly she wasn't, there were so many things she did perfectly. Chief among them was being a good daughter, sister, wife, mother, mother-in-law, grandmother. I will always be grateful for her deep love of George, as well as her deep love for our kids and their husbands. My mother loved and felt things deeply. She let us know it. She would do anything for us to help, or anything to help us. George can attest to her help with countless moves and planning when I was too overwhelmed to even get started. She would forgive us when we misbehaved or disappointed her without us ever having to say we were sorry. Her love was never compromised or withheld. She was proud of her choice in husband. All conversations in these past years included how happy she was to have chosen the best daddy for me and Judith. I loved most of my mother's values. She talked and talked and talked about her feelings and opinions, but actually taught us with her actions. My mother also loved giving and even more so, getting attention. She was the first to introduce herself. She approached everyone with a smile, her deep dimples a source of pride throughout her last days. She was interested in everyone and everything about them. She loved to learn. She loved to teach. She loved beautiful things, all celebrations, dinner parties, and especially birthdays. She loved when my father, Judith, I, George, our kids got compliments, because in her mind we were complimenting, compliments were for her. It wasn't always easy to be on the pedestal she placed me on, but I am personally grateful for the high bar she set for me. She set the stage for me to be confident enough to succeed because she believed I could and would believe the same if she looked at me and told me those things. I remember my bathroom stool when you're young and you have a wooden stool and you step out and it had an image from the story, the train story, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And those words were very much what my mother gave to me. But my mother also cosseted me and didn't make me do the things I didn't like or wasn't good at. Driving, for example. I'm not certain that was such a good thing for me in the long run. She cried easily and often, and was known to whine and share her anxieties with us, perhaps more than we would have liked. My mother was one of the most powerful, iconic, and indefatigable women I have ever met. She was forward-thinking and could make up her own mind and act quickly. She would jump right in when needed, not just for her family and friends, but also for strangers and the disadvantaged. My mother lived a long life, not an easy life, not as big a life as she would have wished for. She went to 21 different elementary schools and was a child of the Depression. She worked full-time while putting herself through college. She did what she could to elevate her taste in music, the arts, and culture. She would have enjoyed more money, more vacations, more experiences, but she was never jealous of others who had more because she was happy having my father and us. My mother was brave and capable. I know I have some of her qualities, but not as much of them as I wish I had. My mother stayed with us as long as she could. She knew how much I loved her and how much I didn't want to be without her. My mother always told me she was my best friend, and I didn't have to tell her for her to know how deeply connected I was to her. I miss my mother. I hope that being reunited with my father and her parents is as satisfying and joyous as she and they deserve. Mommy, you did your job on earth well, and I will always carry you in my heart and mind.
Hi, thank you all so very, very much for being here. As George said, my mother would have loved it, standing room only. He said SRO, and she would have said, what? I am not going to speak nearly as eloquently as Joan. I tend to speak off the cuff. I only have a couple notes jotted down, just the sort of the way I am. But I just want to say that just looking around at you all and having talked to some of my childhood friends, people who are young, my mother not only had such a profound effect on me and Joan and her grandchildren, and Joan has said everything that I said better than I could say it, and I don't need to repeat it, but ditto that to everything she said. But I've had so many people say to me, your mother had such a profound effect on me, which is kind of amazing, because when I think back to my childhood friends, I never had friend's parents who had that kind of effect on me. So my mother was big, she was powerful, and another thing that I want to say that I think is really, really important is she never let it down. I mean, my mother was always there for you. My mother could be rough on me. I wasn't put on a pedestal. I was the second one. It's okay. And I knew how to fight back. So maybe that's better for everyone in the long run. She wasn't easy on me, but my God, she loved me. She loved me. She loved Joan. She loved the children. She loved everyone. And it's just she was always there for me. And my father used to say, my mother wouldn't tell me that my mother was my best friend. My father would say, why are you being difficult on her? She's your best friend. She's your best friend. Anyhow, she was really kind of an amazing person. She too gave me confidence. She may have been lying, but she would tell me, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're this, you're that. Then when I got older, and very recently, she said to me, you got better looking. I just don't understand it. You got better looking as you got older. Who gets better looking as they get older? So she may have been lying to me the whole time. But the important thing is I believed it at the time. So, that's just the type of person. She gave me a confidence that really, no one had. And I think she actually stood up. Joan said something about standing up for the underdog, principles. When I think about my father had strong principles, my mother had strong principles, maybe I got in my mother's mouth a little bit, but she, it's just something that I'm carrying with me that I think I did get from her, and I think it's a good thing, and I'm proud of her for it. Just standing up for what you think is right, even if it's a little bit difficult at times. She loved, I want to say she never let you down. If you needed to sell an apartment, if you had, when I was freaking out at NYU, just having my first panic attack, my mother stayed on the phone with me. I wasn't even planning on talking about this. I'm talking off the cuff. She stood on the line with me the entire night from dusk until twilight, kind of yelling at me, but saying, don't give up, don't give up. I was ready to pack up because I didn't know what a panic attack was. I was ready to pack up. I begged her to come, and she wouldn't come. She said, if I come, I will have handicapped you for the rest of your life. You're going to do this on your own. And that is just so incredibly important. She said, I will destroy you for your life. So she was really, really an amazing person. The last few years, she had the dementia. She got COVID. I'll explain that in a second. But she retained remnants. There was still my mother in her. She would look at. We would joke that maybe she'd wake up from a coma and say, "What's wrong with your hair?" So the last thing she said to Joan, we Zoomed her when she was in the hospital with COVID. She looked at Joan. She said, "Pretty, I was there." And with us, they had us all in garb. They had me in a face shield. They had me in a crazy mask. They had me in literally like, not scrub. And she, thank you. And she looked at me and she said, "Your hair looks crazy." That was my mother. I was surprised she didn't say anything to Roger. So she's just kind of amazing. But she did say, "I love you," and we all got it out of her. We didn't have to work at it. We would say, "I love you." And she really, really, really deteriorated the last year especially. But she was still there, and when she generally knew who we were, and she'd just look at us with love, and just, "I love you, I love you." That's about all she could say. She couldn't really follow any conversations, but "I love you." So, one last thing, and then I want to say one thing about masks. With my father, it's what John was saying, you always carry your parents in your heart, your parents. I don't look at a magnolia tree without thinking of my father, because my father loved a magnolia tree. And in the spring, in DC, the magnolia trees are beautiful. I don't look at a maple tree that's bright red or bright orange or bright yellow without thinking of my father. I don't get on a freeway and think, if I'm late for something, don't speed. He always said, if you're late, don't let anyone rush you. And so my mother, I'm going to carry all that thing. She had even more relationship than my father had. Way, way more. So I know I'm going to carry that strong personality with me wherever I went. And, she was deeply loved. She wanted to know she was loved. She would be thrilled that you're all here, every single one of you. And just want to say that's about it. And it's hard to see her, to know that this is finally it. But thank you all. I want to say one last thing. The COVID is not over. She ended up, I don't know if you all realize this, but she ended up, a combination of dying from COVID is what precipitated the death. She stopped eating. She had severe dementia by the end, but she was still going to live. By the time she died, there was no COVID in her system, but she had stopped eating because of it. And if she had not had COVID, she'd still be alive today. So I just cannot say enough. People weren't careful enough where she was. Wear those masks. It's not over. The vulnerable are still out there. So thank you. Thank you all so much. Try not to.
It goes down each level, so mine's extremely extemporaneous, and I won't be nearly as well done. Gladys and I had a complicated relationship, but I knew at the heart of her was a love for her family, and her loyalty to family, and love for family and friends, and everything. Once you figured that out, you kind of knew where she was coming from. And did she give advice all the time? Yes. Did I agree with her all the time? No. But I knew it was coming from, and that makes all the world of a difference. When she was getting the dementia, and she was losing a lot of the ability to have this kind of sharp conversations, she still kept her personality. And those things, that love and that loyalty, were the things that preserved the most. I have a stash of photos that date back from her honeymoon with David, through her young marriage, and through the different generations of marriages, Joan and George, and Judith and me, and the grandchildren. And when I would visit, we'd sit down, and the one thing I'd always do was I'd take out the photos, and she would have just light up as much to see photos of Max and Jesse, photos of David and Julia, photos of Danny and Megan, and then obviously, you know, her kids too, and you know, the photos of Joan and Judith, you know, and her together was one of her absolute favorites. And you know, she'd want to cycle through the exact same photos every single time, and every single time her face would just light up each time she'd get a new person, and that just showed at the core of where she was. That's probably the biggest reason I wanted to talk, because I wanted all you guys to know that was there, you know, to the very, very end. And it was sharp at the very end. I'm a very touchy-feely guy. I don't know if you know that, but I'm more touchy-feely than a lot of people. And when I would visit her, the first thing she would do, because I'm touchy-feeling, is she'd put out her hand, and we'd hold hands, and we'd talk, and I'd show photos, and talk or whatever. And I call her Screamer because I knew she liked that. And you know, the day before she actually died, we were in the hospital again. And held her hand, and she actually, when I came in, she saw me, she put her hand out, and I knew why, and she grabbed on and she said, "Sweetheart," which was what I would always call her. And when we had Thanksgiving the other day, and we started going around, you know, what are you thankful for? And that's probably the biggest single thing I'm thankful for, is that, you know, we really, that time with her at these last few, you know, as during the long decline, the long goodbye, you know, that really built up, and she really knew, you know, and felt the love, and that's, to me, is the greatest gift. So, thanks everyone for being here.
Just for those of you who don't know background, my family and the Cavells have been very close since we were children. As I bid farewell to Gladys, I say goodbye to a person who helped me navigate some of the greatest difficulties of my childhood and adolescence. Gladys was a lighthouse and a lifeline in stormy emotional seas for me. My family was dysfunctional, which caused damage to my self-image, confidence, sense of security, and identity development. Gladys always had a sense of this, and whenever I was with her, she would look into my eyes and discreetly give me encouragement and acknowledge the fact that I was an intelligent, good, kind person, and I should always believe in myself. Her smile, love, and genuine concern were an affirmation which buttressed me when I needed it most. She helped me see that my poor self-image was not really who I was, and she always gave me the confidence and strength necessary to help me believe in myself. I do not know if I could have emotionally survived without her. As an adult, I called her frequently. She was always eager to hear how I and my family were doing, and she was always delighted to hear good news about me. She frequently told me to stop and smell the roses and take time to enjoy the pleasures of life, rather than devote too much time to work. She understood that I had incorporated my father's workaholic tendencies in an attempt to emulate him and thereby make him proud of me. She also knew that this was not my true self, and she encouraged me to look into my heart and live as the person I am. Gladys wakened this dormant realization that I had suppressed. I followed her admonition and became a much happier person. Thank you, Gladys, for being a beacon of hope and strength to me through dark hours and for helping illuminate my way forward to a happier, more authentic life. You will always be in my heart.
Okay, it's open mic afternoon here at Hillcrest. Does anybody else want to speak before I conclude? Final. Okay. A second here.
I'll say one thing.
You may. Ladies and gentlemen, Jessica Godnick.
Oh yes. There's a lot of like deeper emotional things I can talk about, but I'm going to talk about 3 practical lessons she taught me. 1, you can learn how to spell anything by singing it. 2, that there's a correct and incorrect way that the toilet paper goes on the roll. And I think she would be horrified that every single time I use the toilet, I think about her. And if I'm at somebody's house or a restaurant and I'm using the bathroom and it's on the wrong way, I'll fix it. I can't remember what my third thing was, but I had it. Oh, sorry. And she always said, don't put something down, put it away. And it takes the same effort, and you'll have a much cleaner, happier existence. So that's my 3 practical advice from Gladys. But yeah, if you ever, I can show you the toilet paper. That's really, there's a wrong and a right.
Okay, so 3 lessons in toilet paper today. Yes. Ah. Oh, no. That's unusual. Hi, everybody. Thank you again for being here and for lasting through until I come to speak. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Well, no doubt about it. 97 years is a long time. Time enough to create a lot of history. And history, of course, has within it the word story. And boy, was Gladys ever at the center of a lot of stories. Both ones she told from her long life and ones we told about her from the times we all spent with her. Now for Joan, and Judith, these are mommy stories. For Julia, Jessie, Megan, and Danny, these are Grandma Gladys stories. Of course, for so many others here, they're just plain old Gladys stories. But for me, it was none of those categories. For me, I will always have my GLaDOS stories. You see, from the time I started dating Joan in 1973, I quickly realized I had gotten a package deal. GLaDO came into my life and became an integral part of it. In fact, without GLaDO having insisted that Joan go on the faithful winter break trip to Swan Lake, there would be no Joan and George, no Julia and David, no Jessica and Max. Now, I see her beloved David over there, and David, I don't mean to ignore your important role in my life as well, but I know you wouldn't be jealous of the focus on Gladys. You always let her take the lead right up to the point where, whatever the situation, she inevitably took things too far, causing you to have to say, "Cut the crap, Gladys," and she would dutifully press her reset button. Now everyone, please don't worry, I have not downloaded for recitation here my nearly 50-year database of Gladys stories. I am mindful we are standing outside in Cleveland in December, and recounting my countless tales of GLaDO, as entertaining as that might be, would result in us all freezing to death. Although, of course, from the looks of this place. We came to the right place. Instead, let me share a few remembrances which offer a glimpse of the Gladys I knew and loved. Right from the beginning, although only after David had given me his seal of approval, Glado always had my back. When I started dating Joan, the Cleveland ladies told Gladys that Joan was a prize to be reserved for good, solid Cleveland boys, not a fast-talking New Yorker. But Glado put them in their place. I became Georgie, and she deemed me a good boy, and that view prevailed throughout our lives together. She would always say that things worked out pretty good from the marriage of queen shit and king shit as she flashed her big Betty White smile. That's what she called us. Joan and I were a very young married couple, and Glado helped us in so many ways as we started out together. Remember, we were still in college and in graduate school. Moving and furnishing apartments, of course, were her specialty. She and David housed us in the summers when we both worked in Cleveland. Glado taught Joan to drive a school bus van, this is true, and helped her to create art projects for her summer day camp job. And of course, around the dinner table, she always freely shared her opinions about everything. Clothing, decorating, creating a beautiful table for entertaining, how things were supposed to be right. And yes, opinions on politics and even sex. If you don't believe me about the sex part, well, Joan and I spent summers living in the bedroom next to Glado and David, where she installed an antique cowbell on Joan's four-poster bed so that if I so much as moved a muscle, the bells would ring out like an ice cream truck in July. And we were married. So, when Julia and then Jessie arrived, her focus shifted over, as it should be, to her grandchildren. Glado loved to be with you guys. Any excuse to come to New York to spend time with you and, yes, help us out too. We gave her plenty of opportunities by firing a nanny every few weeks. Glado and David would drive to New York in an instant to help. Or for long business trips and vacations, they were there. And for summers in Bridgehampton, they both loved you girls intensely. But Glado really was the one who knew how to play with you. She never lost the childlike ability to have fun, creative fun, art projects, games, the beach. Oh, how she loved. She loved to take you to the beach and play in the surf with you guys and tell you stories. What a storyteller she was, always beginning with her patented, "Oh, let me tell you about that." So hearing all this, you can get a sense that her family and friends were the center of Gladys's world, and of course we were. But her world was larger than that. She never forgot the community and the country she lived in. She was a school teacher in her early career. Later on, she was a volunteer giving eye tests for amblyopia and a poll worker so dedicated she could put today's election deniers to shame. She was a progressive in a red state who believed in LGBTQ long before it was a thing, and wrote letters in support of many causes for the rights of everyone to a fair shake. And after David died, Gladys continued to live her life in an indomitable spirit. She loved her family events like Julia and David's wedding, and even with her dementia, never stopped asking when Jessie and Max getting married, so she could make plans to come and figure out what to wear so she would look beautiful. She made classic speeches on many of these occasions, including having the crowd in stitches with her speech at Joan's 60th at the Harvard Club. Even at 90, she loved to try new things, like her first ever professional sporting event, where she attended the Cavaliers. They rolled out the red carpet for her at the stadium, and of course the giant scoreboard. Happy birthday, Gladys. And of course, she loved her giant poster on the side of the bus, showing off her favorite photo as we took her and friends around New York for her 90th birthday. Now look, you don't live to 97 without a zest for life, toughness, and luck. In this regard, I guess you could say Glado hit the trifecta. In her later years, I came to appreciate just how strong she was. She had survived breast cancer and carotid artery incidents and so on, but over a decade ago, she had a major health crisis in breaking her femur. And she was in the Cleveland Clinic rehab facility. I met her doctor for the first time. He took me aside. Thank you. They're only recording this, they're not filming it. So she was in the Cleveland Clinic. I met the doctor for the first time. He took me aside and said, "You really start to need to make your plans." And I said, "Do you need for her to die?" And he said, "Most patients with her injuries are gone within 6 months." So I asked the doctor if that was based on a large multi-year data set, and he said yes. I said, "So the data forms a normalized distribution curve?" He said, "Yes again." I said, "Well, aren't there outliers at the tails of all such curves?" He said, "Well, yes, of course." And I said, "Well, doctor, guess who you've got in room 453? And every time, that one and several others, she was wheeled out of the hospital. So finally, Stephen said COVID got her. So Joan, Judith, Julia, Jesse, Megan, and Danny, you have all inherited tax-free some very strong GLaDO genes in you, so put them to good use. Well, we're here in Bedford Heights, which reminds me of Bedford Falls, the mythical town from the movie It's a Wonderful Life. GLaDO, I think you truly believe that you had a wonderful life. You found David, built a family together, made many friends, gave back to your communities. Yes, GLaDO, you had your things too. I would be remiss if I failed to mention your silver, your jewelry, your furniture, your clothes, all in storage now. But the truth is, these pretty things also make you happy. GLaDO, we kept our promise to bring you home to Cleveland. To be next to David, the love of your life. Well, GLaDO and David, you're reunited. And I expect that pretty soon you'll be getting season tickets to a Box at Heaven's Orchestra for weekly concerts. And you'll be visiting the many antique dealers who have set up shops there after eBay took away their businesses on Earth. Doing the things you enjoyed like in the old days, and we all hope so. GLaDO and David, you were loving partners, parents, grandparents, and friends. You gave much to all of us, and we're thankful we got to come along for the ride. And that was such a long one. Look, you've left us with a wealth of so many stories, which I guess we now will call memories. We carry them with us as we leave you and David together now with all our love and in peace. Here.
You got it.
All right. So we're going to conclude. Yeah. Got through it. Just a sec. Okay, for the last piece, Gladys loved cello. This is a Pablo Casals piece called Song of the Birds. And while we bury Gladys, we're going to play this song as was her request. So.
God has given and now God has taken away. Still, bless the name of God. V'yeshev ha'afar al ha'aretz k'shehaya v'haruach teshuv el ha'elohim asher natana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns unto God who gave it. May the soul of Gladys be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, God, to those who mourn, and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. As you are able, I invite you to please rise for the memorial prayer, the El Malay Rachamim. El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Am Semenocha Nechana Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Mimalot Kedoshim Utorim, Kizohar Arakia Masyirim, Et Lihishmat Yakirenu Shahalach Leolamar, Began Eden Techem Menuchata. Ahna Baharachamim Astirecha Beseter Knafech Elolamim, Uhutzrur Biturachayim Bet Ishmata, Adonai Hunechalata, Vitanoach Bishalom, Al Mishkava Vinomar. Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Gladys Cavell, who has gone to her eternal home. God of mercy, we beseech you to remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living, and may Gladys' soul be bound up in the bond of life. God is her portion, may she rest in peace, and to this we say, Amen. We join together now in the words of the Kaddish, as we say together, Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'yamru Amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mivarach le'olam ul'almei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran v'alma v'yamru Amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yamru Amen. Oseh shalom v'rama huya aseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yamru Amen. We pray that God, who makes peace in a high place, will send peace and comfort to you, the mourners, to Israel, and to all humankind. And to this we say, Amen. Friends, as there are loving hands to guide us when we enter into this world, we're taught by our tradition that when we exit from this world, it's not done in the hands of strangers, but in the hands of those who knew us and who loved us and cared for us. At this time, I want to first invite members of the family who wish to place earth on the casket to please come forward and do so.